Across our world we live, in cities and villages, all part of a greater whole, but we are not alone. They come in herds, hives and swarms, prides, packs and pairs, living in nature, members of society. All across our world, crawling along the ground, swimming in the ocean itself, or flying high above us, arthropods exist everywhere. A diverse group of invertebrates with exoskeletons, segmented bodies, and jointed appendages. Including all forms of insects, spiders, scorpions, centipedes, and crustaceans. With nearly 10 million estimated species, they make up over 80% of all known living animals, coming in all shapes and sizes, from the smallest insect at 25 millionths of a gram to the largest lobster at over 44 pounds. The most prolific of all being the ant, a widespread group of insects with over 12,000 species described of an estimated 22,000 species in existence. They have conquered every inch of our globe, existing on every landmass and continent except Antarctica. They can be found in any variety of environments, from tropical and subtropical to temperate and even urban, ranging in size from less than 2 millimeters long at the smallest to over an inch for the largest, most being predatory scavengers, though they may also often eat plant matter and fungus depending on the species. They are distinguished by their elbowed antennae and node-like body structure, unlike most other insects except for their closest relatives, the wasps. Though while wasps may come in a single number or smaller groups, ants come in huge colonies, ranging in size from a few dozen individuals to hundreds of millions, forming nearly a quarter of all animal biomass on Earth. Their success largely being due to their social organization and adaptability. All species featuring EU sociality, or the highest level of organization of animal sociality, with a clear division of labor into different so-called castes, including reproductive and non-reproductive groups, overlapping generations within a colony of adults, and cooperative brood care. With many species also being significantly able to vastly modify their surrounding environments by building enormous and highly complex habitat structures, or colonies, above ground or underneath. Ant colonies are also known as formicaries, made out of sand, dirt, stone pebbles, pine needles, clay, or composite materials. They may range from small hills and towers to intricate systems of underground tunnels, to nests high up in trees, inside logs, under stones and inside hollow stems, with only the army ants leading a life of constant migration, foregoing nests or any hives of any kind. Colonies may also interact and even become fully integrated into a larger supercolony, the largest of which spanning across southern Europe along a nearly 4,000-mile stretch of the Mediterranean and Atlantic coast, with millions of interconnected nests and billions of ants. Itself part of an enormous global mega-colony stretching from Japan to Russia to California and Europe. Individuals from continents apart are shown to instinctively recognize and cooperate with each other, as well as being able to recognize opposing supercolonies, even within the same species. As ants may often be highly territorial and viciously attack ants of encroaching hives, attacking by biting with the mandibles and stinging with the posterior stinger, sometimes also able to spray irritant chemicals such as formic acids. Some, such as the bullet ants of South America, have the most painful sting of any insect. Ants communicate primarily through the use of pheromones, or chemical signatures produced by a variety of glands all along the ant's body, that other ants then perceive through their elongated antennae, providing detailed information about the precise direction and distance of the scent, used for individual and hive recognition, as well as to mark trails to be used by other ants to locate food, as well as alarm pheromones, as used by injured or crushed ants to signal defensive attacks and attract more ants. Some species even using so-called propaganda pheromones, scents that simulate enemy ant pheromones to confuse them and incite fights among their enemies. Touch patterns also assist in communication, for mating purposes and individual recognition. Some species may also communicate through sounds by rubbing together their mandibles. Ant colonies can easily be divided into a strict social hierarchy of 3 castes, most commonly include one or more large egg-laying queens, being the mother of all ants within their colony. Sometimes, however, a hive develops with no queen, instead featuring breeding common ants known as gamergates, sharing breeding and construction duties, though this is rare, present only in 1% of all ant species. The second caste, otherwise being the largest, made up of thousands or millions of sterile females, known as workers. They are tasked with anything from construction to foraging to brood care, as well as defense of the hive, known for their incredible strength in relation to their body size, easily able to lift objects 3 times their own body weight. The last caste being a large number of sexual winged males and females that may appear for a limited time, known as alates, that seasonally may depart the nest in large nuptial flights, usually in late spring or early summer, when the weather is hot and humid, making it easier for the ants to take flight. The winged males, or drones, taking flight first, using visual cues to establish a recognizable mating ground with their peers. The drones then secrete a mating pheromone for the females to follow, though they may also mate with existing queens by entering an existing colony, emitting a mating pheromone to signal his intent so that the workers will let him through without attacking. Mating itself is quick, the male either mounting the queen within seconds or mounting the winged female in the air, forcing her down to land and mate. Females typically mate with as many as 10 or more drones, storing the sperm within their body to continuously fertilize their own eggs. The drones dying soon after mating, while many of the females may die from not finding suitable nesting grounds. The mated females who successfully find suitable nesting grounds soon breaking their wings and selectively fertilizing a few eggs to start a worker population. The first generation of workers being smaller and more fragile, though still able to assist with the construction of the hive and later on caring for more eggs. If the eggs have been fertilized by a male, the progeny will be female. If not, it will be male. The egg then hatches into a larval stage, which is significantly cared for by either the queen herself or worker ants, regurgitating liquid food to it, a process that continues into adulthood, forming a shared communal or social stomach of the hive. The workers also frequently move the larvae around to maintain a consistent temperature to ensure proper development. The larvae then grows through a series of 4 or 5 molts before entering a pupal stage. The differentiation of different castes occurs during this stage, determined in large part by the nutrition that the larvae obtains. After emerging from the pupae, winged males or females emerge from the nest to seek a mate. While new workers may spend the first few days caring for the queen and other young before moving into digging and foraging duties, the shifting duties become what is known as temporal castes, determining the social ranking within the worker caste itself. While they may be active all year long in tropical and subtropical regions, in temperate climates, ants may enter a state of dormancy during winter, lowering the metabolism and spending less time in an active state while seeking shelter deeper inside the hive. Ant colonies are typically long-lived, with ant queens living up to 30 years in the wild, compared to the average worker lifespan between 1 to 3 years, many dying from injuries sustained during foraging, defense of the hive, or predation, though most commonly by other ants. Bees. Insects closely related to ants and wasps, from which they originally evolved. They are instantly recognizable and found on every continent except Antarctica. With nearly 20,000 species described, they are distinct for their black and yellow coloration, short thick body, and branching or fan-like bristles on their forelimbs, used for cleaning their antennae, unlike those of wasps. They range in size from the tiny stingless bee species, with worker bees being less than 1/10 of an inch long, to the largest leafcutter bee, nearly 20 times as large. Unlike many other insects and arthropods, they are pollinators rather than predators, feeding on nectar from flowers for sustenance while collecting pollen or floral oils to provide for their young. Their diet leading to a highly specialized lifestyle and appearance. As flowers grow longer tubes, bees develop longer tongues to extract nectar, developing so-called scopal hairs on their legs or abdomens, as well as pollen baskets, a cavity in the hind legs, both used to carry pollen. Bees have thus developed to become largely symbiotic with their environment, carrying the pollen grains from male plants onto females, assisting in the growth and reproduction of a large number of flower species, as well as by the production of beeswax, excreted by worker bees for construction purposes, which may in turn be eaten upon being discarded by many bird species. or, as with honey, eaten even by larger mammals such as bears. Honey itself being secreted by honeybee workers as regurgitated and concentrated flower nectar, stored within the hive for later consumption. Bees primarily navigate through eyesight and smell, using a pair of large compound eyes taking up much of their heads, along with 3 smaller simple eyes that provide additional visual information on light intensity. Being particularly sensitive to the bright color patterns and even ultraviolet light emissions by desirable flowers. Their antennae additionally being highly sensitive to both touch, smell, and taste, along with small hair-like receptors that can detect air movements, providing a semblance of hearing. Communicating through the use of pheromones and flight patterns. As most bees are highly social animals, either communal or eusocial, living in various types of communities, from hives and colonies to smaller groups, depending on the species. The most advanced of these colonies found among honeybees, bumblebees, and stingless bees, being highly eusocial with a strict social structure within the colony, with cooperative brood care and clear division of labor into reproductive and non-reproductive adults. Each such colony having anywhere between 50 to 200 individuals, as with bumblebees, up to 60,000 individuals for honeybees, featuring highly differentiated castes, distinct both in behavior and appearance, consisting of a matriarch or queen, spawning all other females, also being the largest and often the only reproductive female of the colony. Largely non-reproductive female workers making up the bulk of the colony, tasked with both feeding the larvae as well as building the colony or hive, as well as foraging for pollen and nectar. Some species, such as the honeybee, additionally able to produce beeswax for construction purposes. And male drones at certain stages, selectively bred by the queen seasonally, to help start new colonies elsewhere along with selectively bred queens. Though most species of bees are only primitively eusocial, with only rudimentary classes differing only in behavior rather than morphology, featuring only smaller colonies of a dozen or less. The matriarch, or queen, differing only occasionally in size, while workers and drones are generally identical in appearance, as with sweat bees. While a few species, such as carpenter bees, leaf-cutter bees, and mason bees, are solitary, every female being fertile and constructing their own nest, often in the ground or in hollow reeds or twigs. As such, mating practices may differ greatly depending on the species and social structure, honeybee colonies being perennial, with each queen succeeded by a younger one, born as larvae out of one of the queen's many eggs and raised to become a queen by being fed a so-called royal jelly by the worker bees, a highly specialized secretion from glands in the heads of the worker bees. Initially fed to all larvae, the workers continue to feed the larvae said to be the new queen for far longer than those of drones or workers. The larvae then becomes a pupa for an additional 8 days, before hatching as a virgin queen, taking her nuptial flight along with the drones raised alongside her. After a brief courtship of aerial displays, mating takes place. Most queens mating with multiple males to ensure genetic diversity, as well as retaining a large amount of sperm inside a special compartment inside her ovipositus, deciding each time she lays an egg whether to inseminate it or not. As much like ants, most bees are haplodiploid, wherein females, being diploid, develop from fertilized eggs, while males, being haploid, develop from unfertilized eggs, carrying only one copy of each gene, further easing eusociality since all females take on 100% of their father's genes and 50% of their mother's, making sisters share 75% of their genes, a phenomenon known as super sisters, where sisters are more closely related to each other than to their own offspring or mothers. The eggs and subsequent larvae are then cared for by the worker bees to breed a new generation, each generation of worker bees lasting 1 to 2 years, while queens typically live for between 3 to 4 years. Bees having relatively few natural predators due to their ability to sting for defensive purposes. Many female bees having the ability by using modified ovipositors as stingers, injecting venom that may cause considerable pain to its victim, as well as releasing alarm pheromones to attract other bees to attack the same target. Honeybees additionally having barbed stingers to open up the wound further, thus able to deliver more of its venom. When stinging a larger mammal with thicker hide, the barbs may however lead to the stinger becoming permanently lodged inside its victim, tearing loose from the bee's abdomen, leading to its death. Some, such as Africanized bees, which are a hybrid of European and African honeybees, can also be particularly aggressive, chasing any perceived threat for miles. The collective stings of an entire swarm, capable of killing even larger mammals such as horses or cattle, lending them the alternative name of killer bees, many honeybees sacrificing themselves in defense of the colony. Spiders. Existing worldwide on every continent and landmass except Antarctica. They can be found in every environment imaginable, from tropical jungle to arid desert, to homesteads and urban areas. With over 43,000 species described, ranging in size from a few millimeters for the smallest spider, up to a foot across for the largest. Another form of arthropod, though only distantly related to insects, they are arachnids. A group also including scorpions, ticks, mites, solifuge and harvestmen, having evolved over 300 million years ago. Like their relatives, most spiders are exclusively predatory, feeding on anything from small insects and arthropods to mice and lizards, though some juvenile spiders also feed on plant nectar. Spiders are also distinct for having 8 legs, proportionally large fangs, as well as their complete lack of antennae and wings. And the silk-weaving abilities of most species, excreted from silk glands at the rear of the spider, starting as a liquid protein before turning into a solid nylon-like silk when drawn out. Extremely strong, yet highly flexible, spider silk is among the strongest substances on Earth relative to its mass, with a tensile strength of steel, yet significant elasticity not unlike nylon. Spiders use the silk to construct a variety of complex web structures, depending on the species. Most commonly used to protect their eggs, but also to trap their prey in. Their web systems including orb webs, sheet webs, cobwebs, funnel webs, and tubular webs. The spider typically holding fast at the fringes of its web, awaiting the telltale vibrations of a nearby insect trapped in it. Most webs being not only strong, but sticky. Though the webs eventually lose their stickiness and thus limit their efficiency, leading to the spider consuming most of its own web to recuperate some of the energy spent building it, or to abandon it altogether to construct a new web nearby. Some species also use specialized webs for other purposes, such as the diving bell webs of water spiders, filled with air for the water-dwelling species to breathe underwater, hunting insects on the water surface attacking from below, or smaller webs for throwing, as with the webs of net-casting spiders and bola spiders, lunging at their prey to envelop them in a pre-made sticky web to drag them back to it, as well as gossamer, a particularly fine type of silk to form balloons or kites intended to be caught by the wind to transport the spider to new areas. Particularly used by young spiders, also known as spiderlings. While a few species don't use nets for hunting at all, instead chasing after their prey, relying on eyesight, speed and ambush techniques. Though most spiders only retain a rudimentary eyesight, despite commonly having between 6 to 8 eyes, instead relying on bristles and chemical sensors all along with their bodies to detect pheromones and nearby movements and vibrations. Spiders then eat by one of two means, either by secreting digestive enzymes into their prey to liquefy their insides, or by grinding their prey down to a fleshy pulp using the large appendages immediately before their mouth, known as chelicerae. As the narrow gut of the spider only allows for liquid foods, much like other arthropods. Nearly all spiders also use venom to incapacitate or kill their prey before feeding, secreted from large foldable fangs at the ends of their chelicerae. The venom of some spiders is even capable of killing larger mammals as a defense mechanism, such as rats, cats, and monkeys. Only cribellate orb weavers lacking venom altogether, instead crushing their prey with silk, rapidly weaving it around them once caught. Normally highly solitary, spiders typically only come together during mating or as spiderlings. Only a few cases of tropical or subtropical spiders being social, forming colonies to take down larger prey such as birds and bats, as well as using cooperative nest maintenance featuring larger, far more complex webs and intricate structures than any other species. Sometimes coming in colonies of thousands of individuals who hatch and live out their entire lives within a single colony, which may additionally also swarm between nest sites with synchronized breeding seasons. Females laying eggs in new locations every time to form the next nest site of the colony. As such, communication between spiders may be extensive, although simple, primarily including touch patterns of vibrations and chemical signals unique to each species and even gender, relying entirely on instinct rather than learned behavior, such as those with courtship rituals, typically initiated by the often smaller male. Courtship rituals may vary from highly precise patterns of vibrations in the female's web by the approaching male, to touch patterns on the female itself, effectively hypnotizing her. While jumping spiders, known for their superior eyesight compared to other species, may use gestures and dances to court the female. Mating is then done internally, but indirectly, the male spinning a small sperm web which they then can ejaculate into, transferring it to syringe-like structures on the tips of their exterior mandibles, also known as pedipalps, used to inseminate the female. After breaking the hypnosis, once mating is completed, the female often eats the male, who willingly sacrifices himself to provide the nourishment needed to produce the eggs. The female may then lay up to 3,000 eggs in one or more egg sacs made out of its silk, often hidden within designated nests in hollow trees or underneath vegetation, sometimes even constantly relocated by the mother in order to protect it. The spiderlings pass through all the larval stages inside the egg before hatching, emerging as small, often white or transparent versions of their parents. And while many species abandon the spiderling to disperse upon hatching, some species may transport, protect, or even feed their young fresh prey, or by regurgitating food into their mouths. Once large enough to molt into juvenile form, the spiderlings disperse to find new hunting ground. The average lifespan of spiders varying greatly between species, from 1 to 2 years as with orb weavers, to up to 25 years as with the largest species of tarantula. Spiders, as with ants and bees, may come in all shapes, sizes and social configurations. Though mostly small, they may find safety in numbers, or in their ability to avoid predation, or by being predators themselves. But whether hunters or hunted, pollinators or predators, alone or in huge colonies and hives, they all form an essential component in our ecosystem. Like links in a chain, they are all members of a society, an animal society.